break to the Magpie Circle, joined tonight by Mark Stallard and Chloe Page. In between, some fairly long distance travelling at the moment. Chloe and Stella just about back from Morecambe, and now we're all heading up to Carlisle through the rain on Tuesday. Then we've got Darren Moore's Port Vale on Saturday. Plenty to talk about tonight. We'll be talking referees. Jody Jones issued a statement after it was confirmed he will be out until 2025, a small break in his leg. That as a result of some fairly hefty tackling, which largely has gone unpunished this season. What are our thoughts on the standard of refereeing? Jody, in his statement, clearly talking about needing more protection. Your thoughts and views on that? 1 point from the last two games. I think we'd probably take the point at Morecambe and the way that it panned out. Anyone know conclusively whether that ball was over the line? Anyone on down that line of the pitch to see whether it actually crossed or not? Doesn't matter, does it? It's a point. We'll take it. Win at home, draw away, isn't it? Is the old mantra. Are you happy with where we are so far this season? Just below the 2 points a game mark, just now out of the top three. Your thoughts and views on our start to the season. Lots and lots of observations already on our message boards before we go to Stell and Chloe. I'll read a few of them. Spotter's badge, Nigel Bosworth, who, although this show doesn't start till 7 o'clock, was on the message board at 5:39. There you go, an hour and 21 minutes before kickoff. Nigel Bosworth, come on, you pies. And a little bit of a dejected Phil Summer, who was in a bit late at 5:59. Evening, Nigel, you beat me to it. Come on, you pies. And I'm guessing those two have had a conversation for the last hour and a bit before we've finally got the show started. Alan Dawson gutted about Jody, but I think we have the team to carry on and do well, as they have shown. Coming back when falling behind, not saying Jody won't be missed, because he is, and he surely will be, but come on, you pies. Jurgen Halligan's show regular will miss Jody, but we have a stronger squad than last season. Jody's a massive loss, says Phil, but squad is stronger. Hope the goals don't dry up. Jurgen adds, hopefully Jatta will be back soon. Been quiet on the news front. Yeah, apparently he's had one or two headaches and bits and pieces, in the club are kind of quite rightly so prioritising his health. So we'll have to see whether he becomes involved again on Tuesday. Steve says, evening everyone, time for the squad players to step up and shine this season. Adam Kent, three massive players out injured in Jones, Jatta and Edwards. Look sluggish against Morecambe. Surely we can't sustain any more, particularly up front. Richard Elvian, what does plan B look like with our list of injuries to ensure we remain competitive at the top of the table? Gillian Avis makes the point, I honestly feel that Didsey needs a rest and Grant needs to be dropped, replaced, call it what you will. Ian Hayward, evening all. Stuart Dakin, good evening. I can't understand why Kellen Gordon wasn't in the 18 on Saturday. Played well and scored last Tuesday. Evening from Kay. Richard Hawksworth, evening all. Morecambe was a classic banana skin. Respect the away point. Gazali, cast your mind back to July when we were talking about the worry of one or two of the potential Jody or Langstaff leaving. We were apoplectic then. One's gone and the other out. Onwards we go. Scott and Brown, says Richard Elvian, need to pick up the mantle up front. Didsey was playing in every position, it felt at times, on Saturday. Didsey needs someone up front with him, says Gilly. I feel he's a bit ineffective on his own, certainly in the last couple of seasons. And we'll go on to some more messages shortly. I tell you what, let's kick off with Jody Jones. Obviously, we are going to be playing without Jody till the new year at the earliest. This was a statement Jody put out on his Twitter feed, social media feeds on Sunday, I think it was. Everybody knows how much I love playing football and what it means to me. So any period off of the pitch absolutely kills me. It hurts that little bit more when I'm constantly asking for more protection and for opposition players to not be allowed constant free hits. Unfortunately, this is something that gets brushed aside and results in time off of the pitch. Anyway, everything happens for a reason, and this is just a small bump in the road. Somewhere I've been before, but fortunately nowhere near as bad. Notts fans, I don't want you to worry about me. I want you to be excited for my comeback. The comeback is always greater than the setback, and we all know how I respond to them. For now, I will use this time to be a fan and support our fantastic team. Recover well and spend as much time with my family as possible before I'm back and ready to get promoted. See you all soon. Yeah, upbeat under the circumstances from Jody. Thoughts still?
Yeah, well, obviously he's going to be a massive miss. There's no way of dressing up and pretending anything else. He's player of the year from last season. He's carried that form on into this season at the start of it. Yeah, it's going to be tough to replace him. And they brought Josh Martin in. Who we saw for half an hour or so at the weekend. Fairly impressed for saying the lad had only been in the building sort of 24 hours. And he was asked to come on when we were sort of one behind, needing to get something out of the game. Showed one or two nice touches, showed like he could carry the ball. I mean, again, what you can't do is expect anybody to be an exact replica of Jody Jones, because that is just not going to happen. So he's got to be allowed to produce his own ability, his own skills, what he's good at, and he's got to be integrated into the team and into the squad, no doubt. Gradually, although we need it, as quickly as possible. So he's a good player, played at a higher level. But yeah, losing Jody is a big loss.
You're a big fan of Jody, Chloe. Thoughts?
Yeah, of course. I mean, he is the star player this season, especially after Maka went. We just signed a big deal, but we all know injuries can hit us, and it happens that it's not just been him this season. I mean, you could name 5 or 6 that have either come back from injury or are still injured. Luckily, we have got a bigger squad and a better squad, I think, than we had last season. So we are able to nurse those injuries a little bit. But of course, he's the one person at the end, at the start of the season, that if you said you could kind of protect from all injuries, I'm sure he'd probably be the one that you'd pick out. But again, we have strengthened, and we've played a couple of games without him so far this season, and seem to have got on all right. Don't get me wrong. As soon as he can get back, the better. But our team and the recruitment and the manager and the staff, we all know things like this can happen, and we have already kind of looked for other players just in case this has happened, and they've got to step up now. This is their chance, like you say, for this new guy that we've signed, Martin. He's come in, and we've only signed him on a short-term deal, but he's really got a chance to kind of go and prove himself and kind of show Jody that he's not just there as a pushover, and that he'll be fighting for his space when he comes back. And I'm sure he'll be fighting for a contract as well. So, like I say, I'd probably feel better this season if I had to pick between last season and this season for him to get injured. Obviously, and I never want him to, but we do feel in a stronger position to hopefully cover that, and hopefully he comes back and bounces back like he has done.
Stel, Jody, in his statement there, he kind of makes the point about protection and the roles that a referee has in the game. I think if you go back 20, 30 years ago, tackles from behind, and we can all think of certain players in their pomp, who really did take no prisoners. So the game has tried to move on a bit from that. But equally, do players like Jody, particularly in the lower divisions, do they get enough protection, or is this kind of just going to be part and parcel of the game because football is a contact sport?
Yeah, I mean, as much as we're all frustrated, and Joe no more so than Jody, that you want some sort of protection, and of course you do. You want, if somebody's going over the top on you or anything like that, or deliberately setting out to injure you, then you need the officials to be right on it. And again, what I'm loath to do is go back 30 years. He should have tried playing in my time and all that, because he's not playing in my time. He's playing now, in the here and now. So it's all right. Previous generations will always look on younger players and go, well, you think you don't get protection now? You should have played in mine, but they don't. So that's a sort of moot point. I think football is a physical game. Yes, they're trying to protect players as best as possible nowadays. It's I'll say less physical because athletically they're getting better and better and fitter. But in terms of tackles that are allowed or allowed to get away with, obviously it's less lenient now than it ever has been. But that's still frustrating when you get injuries. The fact of the matter is, I would imagine ever since day dot, if a club identifies a strong player in the opposition, they're going to put him out for special treatment. And if that means being overly physical or as physical as close to the line as you can get without stepping over it in terms of the officials and getting red cards, then that's what happens. That is what happens in football. You have to take it as a bit of a bit of credit to yourself that you're in their heads that they've got to do that. But then it's down. You've almost got to protect yourself, if you like, a little bit. You've got to be. That's why you have to be fit. You have to be strong. You have to be aware of what's happening around you. As Jody is, he's had his fair or more than his fair share of injuries historically, and unfortunately, this now will add to it. But it is part and parcel of the game. Unfortunately, it is. There's no way of preventing it. And if you're a top player, as Jody is, and you've got all that skill, then, like I say, we've seen teams double up on him all the time. We've seen teams leave one or two, on him as well. And that has always happened, and it will always happen. I always say, yes, we get kicked, but it's not, we're allowed to kick others as well. So, you've got to take that. Unfortunately, we're on the receiving end now. We lost Matty Palmer last year, major player for a long time, sort of 7-8 months of the season. Hopefully Jody is, 2 or 3 months rather than 7 or 8, but he'll be a big miss. But it's always difficult to say you need more protection because the referees, the linesmen, the lineswomen, they apply the laws as they see fit. We might not agree with them a lot of the time, but you can raise the point about wanting more protection on certain players and try and highlight it to an official so they might come down on it. But yeah, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get special treatment for certain players, unfortunately.
Does he get enough protection, Chloe?
It's hard, isn't it? Like Styles just said, I think that you can pick players out from all leagues. I mean, we saw it with Grealish when he was 17 years old, and you'll see it with him now. When you've got special players like that you can't get the ball off them unless you go in with a tackle. And Jody is just one of them special players, and he's one of them that I'm sure every team have got a plan on how they're going to mark him, how they're going to effectively knock him out of the game in some aspect. And unfortunately, like you say, that's a lot of teams' targets. The more you can stop him playing, the better it is going to be for the opposition. And unfortunately, this one was a bit of a heavy challenge. He didn't even get a foul for it. But you knew it wasn't good when he kind of, reacted to it and then hobbled around the pitch. I think everyone's kind of hearts were in their mouth a little bit, especially with a game like that. So, yeah, it is obviously sad to hear the confirmation because we didn't really know what had happened. I think there was a few different people saying he's out till the end of the season. He'll come back in a month's time. We never really knew until that statement came out. So, yeah, it will be a big miss. But like Stal said, it is really difficult. We have some games where the referees are card happy. I mean, that Gillingham game was one of them. He booked Abbott in the 3rd minute and then followed by one of theirs. And I think there must have been 6 odd yellow cards that game. And then you've got some games where the refs like to play on as much as they can and let the game flow. So it is difficult. And of course, there's going to be decisions that go for and against us all season. I mean, especially in the last couple of games, we've had decisions go for and decisions go against. And unfortunately, obviously, the Jody one, it was just a harsh tackle. And that's what happens in football, unfortunately. And unfortunately for Jody, it's something that he's seen before. But like he said in his statement, not quite as bad. So hopefully we can just rest and recuperate and get ready for the second half of the season, which I think I've said before is so vitally important. You can be virtually 3/4 of the way down the table and make playoffs. So that's when we really need him back for.
Chris Dakin is in no doubt. Jody hasn't been protected by the refs. Some shocking challenges he has been the victim of. Other thoughts? Nigel Cameron Jones reminds me of Adrian Thorpe back in the 80s, I think that was. I used to love watching Thorpe. He turned the magic on, and I can remember him well. I'm sorry for Jody, says Stuart Smith. Unfortunately, that's life. Referee Stell. Here's my 2 penneth. There is not a single game, I think, now where either or both sets of fans will turn around and say the ref was a disgrace. Pub standard, useless, made a load of mistakes, etc., etc., etc. I think we're getting to the point now where I don't think refs can win, if I'm honest with you. About 0.001% of professional footballers take up the option or decide they want to become a pro referee. Maybe there should be a fast track, but I think most of the players work out you're on a hiding to nothing. We all talk about referees making mistakes and blah, 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 blah. For me, they make no more mistakes than any player does during the course of 90 minutes. And that's not being critical of a player. Referees aren't robots. You know, the best striker in the league will miss shots on target. You know, and everyone talks about this. All we want is consistency. Well, I'd love a really consistent centre forward that never misses a chance. I'd love a really consistent goalkeeper that never drops across. But you're never going to get perfection, are you? And I think there's like a baiting game goes on, as I've said on this show before. And anyone on our flock, you tell me one game in the history of football when a manager or head coach has come out after the game and said, we only won that game because the referee got a decision in our favour. Contrast that with how many times a manager comes out and says, we lost that game because of the referee. Can't have it both ways. I mean, Stel, look, you're an ex-pro. I mean, what is your overall view of the standard of refereeing that we are seeing back in the Football League, for instance, over the last 15 months?
It is a really difficult subject because you always want to say your instant reaction is, yeah, it's not great. You know, your instant reaction wants to say, yeah, they make too many mistakes. But then in the cold light of day, what you've said is exactly right. You know, they make mistakes, of course they do, because they're humans. You know, they as much as we all suspect, you know, they are impartial. They don't, you know, have favourites and all that sort of thing. Have I noticed any difference in the standard? I think I would have to say it's arguably a little bit better than we had in the National League. I would say that. But then you would expect that, wouldn't you? You would expect the officiating to get better the further up, just like the players will get better the further up the pyramid you go. But you're right, and it's I don't know what the right word to be, not disease, but it's inherent in the game and probably always has been to criticise referees when things don't go your way, be it a minor decision in a game, be it, you know, somebody getting injured, or be it a major decision that affects the outcome of a game. The referee and the officiating is always, you know, front and centre when it comes to blame. And there's a blame culture in football, like, you know, there always has been, and there probably always will be. Does that help officiating? No, it doesn't. But, you know, what can they do to help themselves? And I've said this for, like I say, my only input into refereeing. And like I say, I used to give them stick, no doubt, when I played, of course. So it's you know, I'm you know, I shouldn't really be saying it, but I think they should get involved. You know, they're professional. I know not necessarily at League Two level, they've got other jobs as well, but I think they should be involved at training sessions with professional footballers. And I've said this before, be allocated to your local professional club or clubs, whatever it is, because you obviously can't referee them local clubs. Yeah. But it should be part of a referee's, you know, weekly, monthly, yearly work to go and look at how the game is played professionally, be it in the training sessions, and just it's not get to know the players, but it's to speak openly and frankly and honestly with them about the gamesmanship side of the game. what goes on, the dark arts, you want to call it. But just, I think that's the only way they can learn and get better. But I think there's obviously reasons why they don't do that. But for me, I think it would facilitate them getting better, and certainly getting more knowledge of the game, the professional game that happens on match days, knowing the ins and the outs of it, as opposed to they might have been decent amateur players, they might have been whatever, but they haven't played professionally. So therefore, the only way to know the ins and outs of the professional game is to get in and around professional players in training. And I think that will maybe just sharpen them up a little bit. It's not, you're never going to have a perfect referee, just like you're never going to have a perfect player. You're absolutely right. But I think, they can do little bits like that. But also, the thing that is never going to happen is fans are never going to take it easy on officials. And I think managers have got a responsibility as well. I think right from the top down, I think managers have got a responsibility. And it's not so much to protect the Football League and the Premier League referees, it's to protect the 13-year-old kid, boy or girl, whoever it might be, that is starting out on a Sunday morning doing refereeing and officiating, that they're getting dog's abuse off the numpty parents or whatever at the side of the pitch, because that's what happens in the English football. You give stick to the referees and the officials. And unfortunately, just as kids learn what the top players do, good and bad, people in general learn what happens around the top level of the officiating and the abuse that you can and you do give, but maybe you shouldn't. But it happens, and so it's for that reason that maybe just getting older thing, but maybe I've mellowed a little bit on overly criticising officials. Of course, if they make a howler is a howler. That's a terrible decision. There's no justification for it. But if it's a minor 50-50 call or 60-40 call, well, we all see things differently, and they only get one look at it and split in real time in a game. So it is really difficult. Again, this is great coming from me, used to not give them that sort of latitude when I was playing. But yeah, I think that's where we're at, and we've got to be careful. Again, it's that train of it coming through. It's the next generation of officials that are being put off the game in droves because of the abuse that you get.
Derek Flower said, who'd be a ref with the abuse they get and with all the inverted commas cheating that goes on in every game? I agree with Paul, says Joe Crabtree, regards referees. Football is uniquely tribal. Most decisions refs make are criticised by the opposition. I experienced this refereeing junior football. John Collins, it is getting increasingly difficult to recruit referees as they have to work their way through the leagues, and many give up because of abuse and attacks. Would any of us volunteer? He asks. B. Fiscus, the players' fake injuries, appeal corners that obviously aren't. The whole system is skewed. Fine leg. I refereed many games years ago, but gave up because of the abuse and the threats that I received. Stuart Edwards, everyone knows it's the dark arts when a keeper goes down. You should have to take off another player for 30 seconds to cut out the fake injury. Yeah, look, this is a subject I am sure we're going to be revisiting time after time. I'm not sure where the solution is. I suspect it'll get worse, if I'm honest with you, in terms of certainly the perception among supporters. And the reality is, like you said, Stell, head coaches, managers use referees to divert and deflect away from their own inadequacies and results. And interestingly, not one person of our flock has managed to identify one single game ever when a manager or a head coach has come out and said, we've only won that game because the ref gave us a penalty or disallowed that or whatever. So here we go. Chloe, right, so Morecambe. Shorter trip for you than most, trogging up from Preston. Happy with a point or not, given that Morecambe hadn't won a game before?
Absolutely happy with a point, especially after the game. I spoke to a couple of Morecambe fans in the pub before, and obviously the league table doesn't lie, but I've not watched a single Morecambe game this season before. Obviously the one on Saturday, and by all accounts, they've actually played well. Most of the games they've lost has been 1-0. So I knew it was going to be an awkward game. It was a tough game last season, albeit this was a very different game. I was expecting more of what we got last season in terms of all us in possession, and we just couldn't break through. And it wasn't like that at all. I mean, we had a short conversation before coming on tonight, and Stall said it perfectly. They were very brave. I didn't expect them to have as many chances, as much of the ball as what they did. And it seemed to work for them. I think they definitely had more chances than what we did, and they worked the system well. They obviously had a lot of tall players, which is why Cundy obviously came in. And that's kind of what I expected from when I saw the team sheet. And then, albeit first corner, the tallest guy on the pitch, he scores. And from there, it was just difficult. But look, we changed the system a little bit. It worked for us. And yeah, we ended up coming out with a point. Would I have been happy with a point before the game? Yeah, I will always take an away point, no matter where the team is in the league. We're obviously only 6, 7, 8 games into the season. It doesn't tell you too much. And I think that was the story of the game, really. Whether that ball went over the line the other end of the pitch or whether it didn't, I don't know. I thought it did, and I think a lot of Notts fans, especially around me, we all thought it had, but we had absolutely no view of it. I mean, I could have sworn I saw the net go, whether that was Bass touching the side of the net or whether it was the ball, I don't know. But we all thought, like, we've just scored. We've just come back from a really scrappy game. It was a great goal from us, to be perfectly honest. It was a great cross from Austin, and Platt to be there at the back post. And I thought, you know what, we might have got away with one here. And then they went up the other end not so long after. And we all thought, well, that's it. I can't see us getting another chance now. And then all of a sudden, kind of ref blows his whistle and it's not gone in. And I think there was a few sigh of reliefs. And especially after that, I think a lot more people were happier with the point. But yeah, it was an interesting game, but we definitely showed that we've still got resilience. I mean, we've gone down so many times this season already, and we've either come out with a point or with a win in most cases. So it was interesting to see a couple of different players and how we changed the system and how we ended up getting a point out of the game. So I was happy with a point before and after the game.
Stell, you made and oh, by the way, before I forget, Chloe, well done to your granddad, Trevor, who in his mid-70s, it might be his early 70s, I don't know, he's very sprightly, made his first away trip after a broken ankle, there and back on the train. So well done to your granddad. It's not a short trip, is it? He's done well there. Stell, you made a very good point just before we came on air in terms of different approach between the top team playing us and the bottom team playing us. Just elucidate a little bit more.
Yeah, all my best points are off air, Paul, I tell you. It was just a compare and contrast between the last 2 league games. You know, Gillingham the week previous, obviously the difference is obviously we were at home to Gillingham, but they were second in the table, top of the table team, got off to a really good start, full of confidence. And the way they approached playing against Notts was to sit in a low block, sit deep, get bodies behind the ball, look to play on sort of counter attacks when they could, but predominantly it was to sit off, allow Notts to have the ball around the halfway line in their own half in places that weren't going to hurt them. And yes, they rode their luck. Yes, we missed two glorious chances first half that we should have scored. But that's the approach they adopted, despite being an informed team that was full of confidence. Compare and contrast to Saturday, Morecambe, a team who's down the bottom, obviously not had a great start to the campaign so far. And Derek Adams had them going man for man, pressing high up. He had Titonda following Crowley around in the early stages, but they were going man for man, 5 against 5 up front, and willing to leave 1v1 situations should we get the ball forward through the lines. And you would have thought, probably if you were going to put them tactics to each team, you'd have thought that the team in form, Gillingham, would have been the one that fancied themselves to press and get in Notts' face and go individual battles all over the pitch, not the team down the bottom. But that's the way they went about it. And, I tell you what, they knocked Notts out of their rhythm. It took Notts 20, 25 minutes, I think, really to get to grips with the game, to grow into the game. I thought they did do. And I thought a draw was a fair result over the sort of 90 minutes. But just surprising the contrast in how teams approach playing knots. And again, you could say, okay, slight difference. Morecambe were at home, Gillingham were away. But given the starts to the season that they had, it goes to show there is not one size fits all way of playing against any team that is either guaranteed to be successful or not as successful. It's about how you approach it and how you actually apply it on the day in the game. And I thought, despite Morecambe's league position before the game Saturday, they didn't look like a team down near the bottom of the table. I thought they gave Notts a real test, and like I say, they could have won the game. I don't think they really deserved it, but I think a draw was a fair result, as I say. And Notts in the end will be relatively pleased with that point on the road.
Will Hart says Morecambe can adopt a man marking strategy because their pitch was narrow both in width and length. It wouldn't work if they were at Meadow Lane. And a PS, I don't think the whole ball went over the line. I'd love to know how people think it did or it didn't. I'd love to know. Short of being 3 yards away, you don't have a clue. And it might be argued the ref didn't have a clue anyway, and he was only a few yards away. Dale Pikett, Richard Montague, Notts as, I guess, de facto sporting director, was on the 5:30 train out of Morecambe on Saturday, as I'm sure was your granddad, assuming he'd be able to hobble with his recently recovered broken ankle back to the station, Chloe. John Collins, there's a good interview with Morecambe's manager. He says he worked out how to play against us and said that we didn't like it. Nobody has tried to man-mark Notts, and it worked. Lippy Jane was also on the train. Yes, he was. Trains were embarrassingly poor Saturday, as long as they got you there and back. Our train stopped unannounced at Lancaster. Well, there you go. I'm sure Trevor, if he's listening, will former railway guard, will be able to give us the ins and outs of the railway machinations of the branch line from Lancaster to Morecambe, I think it is. Man marking, though, Stell. Back in the day, it was kind of all in vogue, wasn't it? And you would have kind of like specialist midfield, it's not specialist, but midfielders or centre halves whose specialty really was to do a job on one player and literally just run around wherever they went. You don't see much of it now. Question to you, with Jody Jones out of the reckoning, there's more focus on Dan Crowley if you're the opposition to stop him playing. Do you think we may see more opposition now employing that stick a man on Dan Crowley, follow him everywhere, shut him down?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, look, every manager or coach has their own preference for it. Whether that the reason you sort of go, you don't see too many man markers as you man-to-man markers nowadays is because teams are that well coached, that well analysed, if you like, that well prepared, that they have a team shape rather than, right, we'll stick you on him, and if he goes and stands in the showers, follow him, because that disrupts the team shape. A clever player that's being man-marked goes and stands in areas that are not normal, not his usual position, to try and disrupt the opponent's shape. So if you're going to follow me into areas where you don't really want to go, or go into areas where you've got a decision. Do you still come with me or do you not? So it might be the way to go. Look, when you've got a Dan Crowley, when you've got a Jody Jones, Jatta, Dave McGoldrick, whoever, when you've got 3 or 4 decent, or 2 or 3 players that are real eye-catching names and players that can hurt you with bits of skill, then it's difficult to go, well, we'll man mark each of them. If you've got one focal point, one player you're playing against that you can go, well, he's the one we need to stop. So then you might set a plan, or set a trap to prevent him getting the ball, or whatever his strength is, you try and combat that. But it's not so easy when there's 2 or 3 players that can equally hurt you. So whether other teams adopt it, I'm not so sure. I think nowadays coaches prefer the team shape, making sure we've got either, say, modern parlance, low blocks, mid blocks, high blocks, which is the old sitting deep or pressing from the front. But I think coaches much prefer the team organisation as opposed to singling out any one player, because it's almost giving credit or building up an opponent more than you really want to need to say, look, we've got to give him special treatment. Like I say, Derek Adams, and he does take credit for the way he set his team up on Saturday, because it worked. Had we won 4-0, had we got the first goal, then people are going, what on earth was he thinking? And that is the nature of football matches. They can change, and people's perception of what happens within them, so-called tactically, can change on, a shot going in, George Abbott sticking it past the keeper one-on-one, or, the chances that aren't taken in the game, they can skew your thinking after a game about what you've actually seen. But I thought it was brave, it was novel, and certainly a contrast to how Gillingham approached it. And Gillingham got all 3 points, so they'll say their approach worked. They didn't specifically man mark anybody, but they were sure to keep themselves organised and make it difficult, condense space. So, like I say, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Chloe, you're pointing the wheels back up the M6 tomorrow night. Obviously, you're making, I say, short. Still probably an hour and a half each way from Preston to Carlisle. What are you expecting? So, in advance, given your mantra at Morecambe, you'd take a point, would you?
Always. I don't care who the opponent is. Away from home, I'll always take a point. But yeah, I'm expecting it to be a very wet game. It's not stopped.
It's been wet in Carlisle before.
Yeah. Honestly, the roads are horrendous. So anyone driving, I'd be wary. Like I say, it's not too far from me. Luckily, it's a much longer journey from Notts. So I'm quite lucky in that aspect. And quite a few of the games, especially from now till Christmas, are up and around the northwest compared to the many seasons we had in London in the National League. So yeah, but I'm expecting again a tough game. Like Stall says, everyone we come up against is going to have a different game plan towards how we're going to play, and I don't think this will be any different. It'll be interesting to see, obviously, our starting lineup, because it does tend to slightly change each game. I mean, I'd personally like to see the back end of inverted wingers. I'm still not convinced by it. Again, like Tarula on the Morecambe game, had so many chances unmarked to put a cross into the box on his weak foot, and then we kind of change it around, and Austin on his right foot into the box. So obviously, we still score goals from playing inverted wingers, and they get their chances in a slightly different way. But I'd like to see us maybe go back to putting people on the right side of what footed they are. I personally prefer it that way. And it is very frustrating when you have got people kind of using their wrong foot and a cross coming off poorly, and it could have been a lot better. So that's just my personal view. And I'm sure they'll play inverted wingers tomorrow and will score 4 goals. That's normally what happens when you put an opinion out there. But yeah, either way, I'm expecting a tough game, and it'll be interesting as they always are, but absolutely take a point.
Still, we bump into Mike Williamson again, which is kind of, earlier than we had expected. The last time, I think I'm right in saying, our manager crossed swords with Mr. Williamson. It was hands down a win to Notts, wasn't it, against MK Dons? I think we won fairly easily, actually. And he was, and if I remember right, he was quite complimentary about us. I think a lot of surprise that he's made the move to Carlisle. There is a view within the game that he jumped before he was pushed with the changeover of ownership at MK Dons. Who knows whether that is correct or not, but that's kind of a bit of an opinion within the game. Given the new head coach, does that make it more difficult or not, or just not make any difference at all, really?
Again, minimal difference, really. You would always say it probably makes it a little bit more difficult because, players have got a new coach. They want to impress. So, in theory, that they're players, not that you doubt that they would be anyway, but that you would think that they're going to be right at it. The other side of that coin is they've got to get their head around a slightly different way of playing that the new manager, the new head coach will want to do. So that might just confuse things a little for them, might muddy it. But Yes, it doesn't really make a great deal. Once the whistle goes, you go into a game, you forget about who's coaching, managing, how long he's been there. It's all about you and your opponents, and that's all you ever think about, and then trying to implement your style against theirs and win your battles. So I don't think he'll have a massive impact. Come the start. I like you. I'm quite surprised when I heard that announced a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, who knows behind the scenes? You might that train of thought might well be right. You know how things work in football.
Morecambe says Lippy Jen. It's probably not a bad point. Knew all about Crowley because of his previous time playing at the club. Bedo, excellent game against his former club, said Richard Elvian. Jack Hobbs, my local away game tomorrow. I'm from Newcastle, bringing a few Geordies with me, so fingers crossed. I did make the point about it being a short hop to Carlisle on one of the Facebook promotion pages, and had all sorts of people. There's people coming down from Glasgow. Someone lives 10 minutes away from Carlisle. So for some people, it's their kind of like local match, really. I'm going up with my lad. We should be going up on the train back in the morning. We're staying at the appropriately named County Hotel. Couldn't afford the Ibis. 80 to 90 quid there, but the County Hotel is 40 quid. I dread to think what it's going to be like, but it's one of these old-fashioned railway hotels next to the station. But for 40 quid, you can't really grumble, can you? What else have we got? Hope to see more of Kellen Gordon tomorrow, says Richard Elvian. John Collins, Gordon deserves to start. He can certainly cross the ball. Be interested to see whether Robertson gets back into the starting lineup or will still be coming off the bench. Michael Fletcher, I think we need to make sure we get a strong start because we've been letting in early goals recently. Stell, injuries. Okay, and yeah, age-old debate on this. Clearly, we're suffering injuries to. All players are important, but clearly some are more important than others. And last season's League Two Player of the Year, we haven't got him till at least January. Jata is struggling to find any much game time as a result of the concussion he received. Does that in any way, shape, or form affect your ambitions for Notts at the minute? Does it temper them or not? And the reason I make the point is that it's very easy to point a finger at injuries and then say, oh, well, we haven't won for 2 or 3 because we haven't got him or we haven't got him. And I would use an example, let us say, of Mansfield last season, get undrawn and quartered for this. Now, they had an incredible number of injuries, but kind of ground out results, typical Nigel Clough way, along the way, and didn't let it affect them. And what some of our flock have mentioned here, we talk about a squad. It's now the time you are looking for, inverted commas, the squad players to step up and be counted.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, to answer your original question, does it alter the ambitions I've got for them? No, it doesn't. Injuries are part and parcel. Well, you suspect during a 46-game season, an 8-9 month season as it is, you suspect that you're going to get injuries along the way. You hope they're not too bad. You hope they come, reasonably spaced out and you don't have a deluge of injuries at any one time. It does seem like we've got quite a few at the minute. And we've certainly had a fair few in the opening weeks of the season. But that is why the recruitment brings in the players and gives us the size of the squad and the quality of the squad that we believe that we've got. Because it is a chance. Every time Jody Jones isn't playing, that is a chance for somebody else, be it Josh Martin, who's come into the club, or be it a Kellen Gordon, a Nick Cerula, or be it whoever it is, a Sam Austin, to play in that position. It is another chance to stake your claim, to show what a player you can be, and to say, look, I'm not Jody, or I'm not whoever is missing, but I've got my own skill set, and I can influence games for the positive. And that is what you hope for. Now, that comes down to the recruitment, about building this squad that's got, you always look for sort of 2 players in every position, don't you? Somebody who's in form and going to be playing, and then a replacement if needed. And they're going to be equally as strong, equally as able to influence games in a positive manner. And I think it was at the Accrington game where we were missing Jody and Dan Crowley. You know, David McGoldrick got a couple of goals. We won that game. Other players came in. Other players came in and did the job, where we saw the team sheet and we were maybe eyebrows raised going, oh, no Jody, no Dan Crowley. Oh, right, yeah. But that's where squad players come in. They do their job and stake a claim to stay in the team. So that's what you want. You want that competition for places. The problem comes is when you get your chance if you envisage yourself as a squad player and you get a chance, be it through injury, through loss of form, be it through whatever, and if you don't take it, you've got nobody else to blame or nobody else to look at or point the finger at other than yourself. So I think I think I've not spoken to anybody who thinks this season's squad is weaker than last season's squad. I think in general, the feedback I'm getting at games is that most people are quite happy with it. It seems like there's a bit more strength in depth. So, we've got that strength of squad and we need to utilise it, or we have to utilise it. We need them players to come to the fore when they're required. And that is not an easy task. And that then is credit to sort of Stuart Maynard and the coaching staff for keeping everybody on their toes and ready for when their chance comes. I still, you mentioned Scott Robertson there. He's been sort of in and out, hasn't he? Stop-start part of the season. Matty Palmer's gradually just getting himself back into speed of things. But we've got people like Rod McDonald. I was really impressed with him at Burton. Now, I know people, it's a trophy game. Well, it's not the same, but really impressed with him. His first outing, we've not seen anything of him. And then he wasn't involved again in the 18, so I hope he hasn't had any sort of setback, just precautionary or whatever for that. We've got this Lucas Ness who came in. We've not seen anything of him. We know he came in with an injury. I don't know what the latest is on him. But there's also others. Yeah. So there are others as well. We've got cover. We have got depth in the squad, if you like. But again, it's always difficult to replace your real key match-winning players like a Jody Jones. But that's where you've got to put your faith in the team, the way the team play, the team patterns. That, okay, you can't rely on somebody beating three players and thinking one in the top corner every time. But what you can rely on is somebody being able to come in, pass and control the ball, move it sharply, play 1 and 2 touch, remember the patterns of play, work their socks off, running off the ball, and give everything for the team to create a team goal, a solid team that wins the game. So I think what we've got at the minute is a squad that looks like it's got good depth, despite these injuries that we seem to have picked up in the first 6 weeks of the season.
Gaza Lee makes the comment, at this rate of losing players, Cameron Muir will be in double figures by Christmas. Cameron, of course, becoming the youngest ever Notts player to make a senior game. I think he lowers the record previously held by Jermaine Pennant when he came on against Burton last week, not yet 16 years old. Richard Elvian says we need somebody in Jody's place to take players on and create opportunities. Ian Hayward, Cisse looked good in the Burton game. Yeah, 5 youth team players or academy players, whatever you call them these days. Bodes well for the future and a production line for the club of young players. Chloe, if any, do you make any allowances for the fact with senior players out when we're over this next course of games?
Yeah, it is interesting, and like Stal said, it just opens the door for players that didn't think they'd maybe get so many minutes. I mean, Martin already's come in and he's got to make a name for himself. He's only on a short-term deal, and whether he wants a full-time contract with us or whether he wants to put his name in the shop window, he's got to impress somewhere. And I mean, the first couple of minutes I was a bit unsure, but again, like Stal said, he's only been in the door less than 24 hours, but he really grew into the game and again had a couple of good shots and definitely looked like a good option. And again, there's a reason we signed these players. We'll have looked at him before. We've not just kind of picked a random name out of the hat and said he'll do well while we've got other players out injured. I think Abbott's been a really good signing. And again, I don't think he probably expected to get as many minutes, especially straight away. Obviously, with him being from a Premier League side like Tottenham, they're not going to send him somewhere for him to not get any match time, don't get me wrong. But we've been quite fortunate that maybe his position has kind of had a bit of an opening and we can really see what he's about. And it means people like Robertson, they're not just walking back into the team. I think there's a couple of positives about that. It means we don't have to bring players back too early from injury, because we have got players performing. Hinchy had a really good start to the season as well. We obviously had Palmer and Robertson out, and he played really well in the games that I've seen him. Obviously Abbott's come in. There's players all over the pitch that have come in and really put their name to the sheet. And it also means that the people that are coming back from injury have to fight for their place. They're not walking straight back into the team. I mean, we might have found another world beater, and we're kind of looking at Jody in January, and he's a bit nervous. But yeah, it's great to have the depth, and it is good that our recruitment has been so good so far, and these players are able to come virtually walk straight into the team and perform well. So I'm not nervous as of yet, but it does seem to be that we kind of find a player and they start playing really well, and then somebody else gets injured. We are in a little bit of a cycle at the moment. But hopefully this means we can get everyone well rested and get back for the second half of the season and really have competition for places. But at the moment, yeah, it's not great. Again, there's more people than Jody that are missing, obviously Jatta, and then you talk about people like Edwards, and the list kind of goes on. There's people we haven't even seen yet. So it does show you how good our recruitment is. But yeah, every game's interesting because you just don't know what's going to happen. But obviously at this point, we don't need any more. Of course, you're going to struggle if you're going to have two players at the same position injured in the first 10 games of the season. You can't cover for all possibilities. Obviously, if McGoldrick now gets injured, we've obviously got Scott that seems to still be out. Yeah, of course we're going to struggle, but we can't go and sign 30 goals a season players at the start of the season. You have to adapt to it when it comes, and I think we've done well so far. So I think I'm fairly confident as we stand. Obviously, the Burton game was good, and obviously Shrewsbury at the start of the season, it was a bit of an interesting game. But again, it showed us some players that we hadn't yet seen, and that again were contenders when we'd not even really thought about them. So at this moment in time, we're kind of carrying the injuries, but it's not affecting us too badly, and we just kind of touch wood that there's not too many more to come.
Port Vale Saturday, Stel, looking ahead to that one. And there's already a bit of debate emanating on social media wise. Port Vale's support has been capped at just under 2,000 in the County Road end, and Notts have told them they're not having any more. I don't think Port Vale are too happy about that. Boot's been on the other foot with other places. Chesterfield, I guess, would be an example of that. My understanding via the club is that you go above the 2,000 and it kind of starts to trigger financial considerations, increased police shutting down County Road after the end of the game. So crowd issues and crowd management. And the club kind of have to make a judgment call. Players' perspective, Stel, does it make any difference to you as a player? You know, if you're away and you've got 2,000 fans behind you, or 3,000 or 500, does it make a difference or not?
Well, yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the more fans you can have in a ground, the better. You know, the more noise they make, the more they'll get behind you. You know, when the game's in motion, whether that be for the goal situation, the score line of a game, or whether it's just, you know, how the game is going, a tackle or an incident or something like that. Yeah, the crowd definitely lift you. So it does make a difference. I mean, how much difference you're talking between, you know, 2,000 as opposed to 2,500? You know, you're talking, you know, incremental differences. I think the other aspect, you say about the financial aspect as well. I think the other aspect is, yeah, you obviously want, you know, people in there, and you want, you know, away fans as well to help make an atmosphere, but you don't want to give the away fans so much that it sort of nullifies the atmosphere, and it's, you know, it increases the away team's chances as well. So yeah, if 2,000 is the cut-off point for like say triggering other financial considerations, then that seems fair enough, really.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, it evokes a lot of debate, because I guess the boot is on the other foot with when we go to Chesterfield, and we have a much smaller allocation this year than previous years, Chloe, because Chesterfield have kind of reconfigured home support and where they go. And I know from my time in previous years in football, sometimes managers would want to take on board Stel's point, an active input. You know, Newcastle, the away fans are stuck in the most inaccessible top corner 14 miles up in the air, about half a mile from the pitch, and that's obviously designed to make their impact as minimal as possible. My own personal view is you want as many people in a stadium, full stop. It's a theatre, it's the Colosseum, but I understand Notts' position in terms of how they allocate those numbers. But personally, I would always want to see as many fans to fill the stadium as much as you possibly can. As a fan, Chloe, you work in football as well at Bolton, previously at Burnley. I mean, what's your take on, allocations and fans, segregation, all of that sort of thing?
Personally, I think as little away fans as you possibly can get into the ground is better. Yeah.
Have you got a ticket to Chesterfield?
Yeah, luckily, yeah. I have. But yeah, and I mean, it is awkward because stereotypically, most grounds, especially in the higher leagues, away fans are behind a goal in a smaller section, so they can be capped. Whereas obviously how we've worked it in the seasons, I mean, as long as I've supported Notts, they've always had the long stand. Now, a lot of the time it's because we can't fill the ground ourselves, to be brutally honest. These past couple of seasons are the best crowds I've seen from Notts, to the point we've had to open the Jimmy Savile stand up for Notts supporters, and I hope that continues and we are able to utilise the ground by having as many Notts fans in it as possible. I completely understand that, especially in the lower leagues, that there is a massive financial aspect in terms of getting people into the ground, whoever they are. But the games that stand out to me are your local derbies. We're giving Mansfield 5,000 fans. We're giving Chesterfield 5,000 fans. We're giving Grimsby 5,000 fans. And it does make a big impact because generally away fans are louder than the home fans, kind of no matter how many there are. They make a noise. And the thing that I struggle with Notts is we do have a lot more tickets to give out, whereas most of the teams, whether that's in the National League, whether that's in League Two or mainly even League One, they don't even have the capacity to possibly give us anything near that. And again, we've seen a lot of clubs cap how many they're even giving us, because you have to give a certain percentage of obviously the gate to away supporters. And then if you want to offer them more, you can do. But whether we've been capped or whether that's at full capacity, we very rarely see numbers reach over 2,000 away tickets given to us. And a lot of the times it's less than 1,000. So like you say, though, there must be a point of when does ticket allocation outweigh the additional cost of opening up extra kiosks, more staff in the games, stewarding, road closures and things like that. So obviously I don't know the financial situation ins and outs, and absolutely match day revenue counts for a hell of a lot more than it does in the Premier League. It's kind of one of their fifth or sixth kind of revenue stream, whereas what probably is our top revenue stream, really. So I completely understand why we do end up giving teams more, but do I think that we should be limiting it? Absolutely, because I do think there's been many occasions where I think, don't get me wrong, like Sal said, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to win the game because they've got an extra 2,000 fans in there. But it absolutely does make a very hostile game, to be honest, especially when you kind of, I mean, I sit in the Derek Pavers and looking over, and that stands full of away fans. It is quite intimidating. So yeah, I personally like to keep as minimum as possible. So I am glad we've kind of, I mean, this might be a trial run. Obviously, Port Vale's not too far down the road, and we obviously could have sold X amount more tickets. But this might be a trial run for them to say, look, how much difference have we actually lost or gained by not having the extra fans? And you can't necessarily turn around and say, oh, well, we still, for argument's sake, if we lose the game, they can't turn around and say, well, that's because of not having enough fans or anything like that. So they won't look at it like that, I'm sure. But I'm sure from a financial situation, they know that Port Vale could have sold an extra at least 1,000, I'm sure. So it will be interesting to see what we do from here on out. And obviously it does make a difference, and they know that because of the Grimsby game. I mean, a couple of weeks before we played them in the playoffs at home, we gave them double the allocation, and we then halved that for the playoffs. So I think everybody knows that it does make a difference. But obviously I'm from a ticketing background, so all of this is great fun for me. But no, I do prefer as minimum as possible, and I'm used to either, especially recently, struggle to get a ticket for an away game because they don't give us enough. So we should be doing the same back personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably take a different view to many fans, but let them all in. Let them all in. Take the money off them. Offset some of the millions of pounds that the Reach brothers lose trying to run this football club, and bring on the atmosphere. I appreciate that may make me a bit of a minority, but for me, I'd actually enjoy an atmosphere where there's 4,000 Grimsby fans than 2,000 Grimsby fans in terms of theatre and a sense of occasion. And of course, I think I'm right in saying when we cut the allocation for Grimsby for the playoff game, we lost, didn't we? But anyway, look, it's irrelevant. Port Vale, Stel, we'll wrap up on this. Darren Moore, I don't know whether you've come across Darren, he's at Derby for a bit, mate. Top guy, one of the best guys in football I have ever met. Lovely guy. They're not dissimilar to Notts. Big supporter base, decent sized club. And I would suspect after relegation, there's a reasonable amount of expectation on them getting promotion when they look at what else there is in the division this year without a Wrexham, without a Stockport.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we said it from the start of the season, didn't we? With the Wrexham, Stockport, Mansfield going up out of the division, bigger budgets out of the division. There's going to be a dozen or so clubs with genuine aspirations of thinking, with a fair wind and, a little bit of things going their way, that they could get automatic promotion and certainly be in the playoff mix. And Port Vale are certainly one of them clubs. Perennially a sort of League One, League Two club. Yes, they had a bit of a spell in the Championship, didn't they, many years ago? But they've got a decent fan base. They're well supported, and they will have expectation, just as Notts do. So it's about managing that expectation. And you're right. I think Darren Moore, as a manager, I think he's been unlucky in a couple of jobs he's done. He's done really good jobs at places and been unlucky to sort of end up losing jobs for differing reasons sometimes, not always purely based on what happens on the pitch. So I think they're going to be a good test again, but obviously I think Carlisle will be a good test tomorrow night. I think they've got good players there, just maybe not playing, to the best of their ability. But again, two relegated teams back to back, one away, one at home. And I think from a Notts perspective, we've got to be looking to come out of it with 4 points. If we can do that, then I think we'll all be relatively happy.
Yeah, I'd take 4 points now. Absolutely, still. Absolutely. Right. As we all need our beauty sleep tonight to drive or get on the train and get up to Carlisle, we shall all be up there. About 400 Notts fans, I'm told, will be up there, which I think is a great shout on a Tuesday night. We're in orange, I believe, tomorrow. Not this orange. This orange is about... Did you wear one of these, Stel?
Yeah, the Sports Logic one, isn't it? Yeah. I think I did back in the days. Horrendous, that, with the black line. I used to hate it back then, and it's not grown on me with age. But the modern orange one, I quite like that. Yeah.
It was a player one. Henrik Jorgensen. There's a name.
Henrik. Wow. Yes.
You remember him? Danish.
I remember him. Yeah. I've never spoken to him since he left Notts, but yeah, Henrik. Yeah. Nice lad.
Yeah, there we go. Chloe, thank you very much indeed. Safe driving up tomorrow, up the M6. Thank you for joining us tonight, as always. Stel, who will you be in? Will you be with Dave tomorrow now? I saw him signing off from the cricket, I think, yesterday or today.
Yeah, Dave will be there tomorrow. He's brought the cricket weather with him, obviously. It's never stopped raining today. So as long as that river don't burst its banks near the ground up there, remember when that flooded a few years back? We should be okay. But yeah, me and Dave are going up tomorrow. Yeah,
so presumably on BBC expenses, you'll be in some 5-star Cumbrian stately home, will you, tomorrow, rather than 40 quid in the county hotel with me and my lad?
No, on BBC expenses, we'll be up there on diesel and coming back on diesel in the middle of the night. So yeah, we're not staying up. We're up and down in a day. So it'll be a long day tomorrow. And like I say, 400 Notts fans going. That's tremendous. On a Tuesday night away at Carlisle, fantastic. Absolutely superb travelling support.
You're one of them, Chloe. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Thanks again, Paul.
All right. Thanks again, Stel. And let's hope we'll all gladly take 4 points from these next 2 games, I suspect. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back next week. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.